welcome to the Art of Being Human. Last time I started talking about the three things that children have to decide for themselves about before they can fully become an adult. One was their belief system, what are they going to believe in? Another was what kind of education that you're going to have. But there is one more in addition to that, and that's marriage. Who are you going to marry? Do you want to stay single? Do you want to get married at all? What kind of a person are you looking for? Do you have a preference? And all of this. Usually, when it comes to jobs and marriages, we just kind of fall into it. But I know a lot of people use marriage, certain things, marriage dating services. That's what I'm trying to think of. A lot of people use dating services, and they're doing that for the purpose of either companionship or getting married. Now, I myself, I have a great hesitation about using such services, and I'm not saying that they're bad per se, but I'd rather let nature take its course. You know, if you're supposed to be married, God can make sure you meet the right person. You don't have to manipulate to find the right person. God does not need your manipulation in order to pick somebody for you or to bring you to a person that you will eventually marry. And that's my concern about dating services. And I think maybe more girls and boys get involved with it, but I'm not 100% sure. What they really want is they want to get married, or they want to settle down, they want to start raising a family, they want to have an adult lifestyle. And why rush things? It's going to happen when it's going to happen. It's like trying to make a child walk before they're ready. It doesn't work. They're going to fall down because their bodies aren't ready. When you're ready to be married, someone will appear. It'll happen naturally, and it doesn't have to be manipulated. And my concern with dating services is that it's like a manipulation. I'm going to date so many people, and I'm going to choose one. Well, that shouldn't be my purpose in life. My purpose in life should be to do the best I can where I am. You know the statement, bloom where you're planted. And then if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It was never my purpose and never my concern. I never worried about whether I was going to get married or not. Now, as it turns out, there are 3 times when I could have got married, but something happened, something intervened, and I didn't. And I always thought it was God's purpose for me to stay single, because one of those people I would have married, and they were all nice guys. There wasn't a problem with anything. There was no abuse. There was no bullying. We had good relationships, but it just wasn't the right time, or it wasn't the right person. So why not just let nature take its course, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I know a lot of girls in high school, when I was in high school, and I realize it was eons ago, but when I was in high school, their goal was to go through high school, to get engaged in their senior year, and to get married after they graduated from high school. Because they considered, okay, I've gone to high school, I've got my education now I can settle down, I can raise a family, I can have a married life in the White House with a picket fence and all that. But that's not the way life is today. There are so many options. There are so many choices you can make. You can get married while you're in school. You can get married or to postpone marriage until after you're out of school. So there's just a lot of things that make that kind of lifestyle of I got to get my education, I got to get married, not so important anymore. So at any rate, the marriage, your belief system, your education, these are things that have to be worked on and have to be resolved before you can become a full adult. Now, and these are critical issues, because who you choose to marry, where you choose to go to school, what kind of a profession you choose to have, that's going to determine a lot of things about your life. And that's why it's so important, I think, that teenagers and younger children even get the counseling that they need to help them resolve what it is that they want, to understand what is best for them and what they really want. And what does it make a difference? Well, if you're marrying a doctor, you're going to live in a society where people have a higher income. If you're going to have 3 or 4 college degrees, I know I have 3 college degrees, you're going to want to live with people who have that kind of education. So it's going to depend, it's going to change your social life and your income and the kind of lifestyle you have and the kinds of people you have as friends, even the churches that you go to if you go to church. So it does make a difference. It's going to make a difference in the friends that you make and when you decide, where you decide to live. And so if you're interested in being a college professor, I wanted to be a college professor, you're going to live in a town where there's a college, where you can get a job at the college, where you can teach or whatever. So we have to think about that. So these 3 things I've talked about, and they affect all of the normal teenagers' life. Teenagers have to deal with that. But add to that these things. That child may have a chronic illness. There may be an accident. There may be abuse. There may be bullying, You may deal with problems with personality disorders. Add that to what I've just said, plus on top of that, a brain that's not fully developed. Can you see the confusion that would come? You have a child that is growing up. He has all the hormonal surges of a teenager. And in addition to that, he may have a personality disorder. What if he has something like Asperger's syndrome? What if his brain, of course, is not developing? What if he has some other kind of a chronic illness and he's got that on top of everything? It's no wonder that teenagers have a hard time in deciding what they're going to be and what they want to do. And they need support as they go through the process of being a teenager. Teenagerhood is not for sissies. There's an awful lot of stuff that goes on. So this is why I want to do this session, just to get you familiar with what your teenager is dealing with it. So why do teenagers do careless things? It's because their brain is not developed. I heard a doctor say the problem with being 14 is that you can't see around the corners. And he was right. You may know what you're doing when you're 14, but you don't have a sense of what the ramifications are, because that part of the brain is the last kind of part of the brain to develop. So let's just take a look at this chart for 1 second here, since I brought it in. This is my version of the human brain. This is the frontal lobe right here. This is where your thinking occurs, your reasoning occurs, and your understanding of what happens as a result of your behavior. Whatever consequences you have as a result of your behavior, you can conjure it up and think about it, but you're going to be using this part of the brain to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to understand the consequences of your behavior because the brain isn't ready to do that. Unfortunately, for teenagers and young adults, this part of the brain is the last part of the brain to develop. So the reasoning skills and all of that come in last. When the brain rewires, that's the last. And that's hard to deal with because it means that through a lot of your young adulthood, in your early 20s, you may be developing a career, you may be developing a lifestyle, and it's okay, but you can't fully reason out what your decisions are going to do. I think in terms of, and I don't know if I should bring it up, but you remember the case of Pam Smart. She was a teacher, and her husband was killed, and the students killed her husband. And they were all sent to jail, and she has a lifetime sentence without the possibility of parole. Why would the kids do something like kill a teacher's husband? They were doing it because they were so focused on her and what they thought she wanted them to do, that she kind of manipulated their minds. And with a teenager, that's possible to do. A teenager can become so focused, and certain personality disorders, this is also true. They can become so focused on something that they lose the big picture. All they think about is what they're focused on. Why? The brain can't do it yet. The brain does not have the ability to see through everything. So they may say, oh, I'm fully mature, I can make my own decisions, but they can't see down the road as to where these decisions are going to lead, because the brain that does the reasoning and understands the consequences for behavior, it's just not functioning yet. It's functioning, but not to the fullest extent. It's being rewired. So you can see that it's important that parents stay on top of things with their children, and they need to know what they're doing on the internet, and they need to know if their child is being bullied, and they need to take actions and support this child and work with them with it. The child needs to know they can always go to their parents for help if they have a problem. No matter what the problem is. If I had a child, I never did have kids, I was never married. But if I had a child, I would let him know from early on, you have a problem, you come to me. And I can promise you I'll never get mad. You see, if they feel they're going to be yelled at and all of that, they're not going to come. They're going to try to handle it on their own, even though, according to their brain development, they may not be able to handle it on their own because they're not mature enough. So you build up a good, healthy relationship with your child while they're young. They feel that they can come to you no matter what. And then when the real heavy stuff comes, they're being bullied. And you know, bullies, they say terrible things. Why don't you go out and kill yourself? You're not worth anything anyway. I mean, they can destroy a person, which is why I'm so concerned about it. And I may, if I can get it together and have the time to get it together, I want to do segments on bullying and what you can do to help a child out. I know when I was teaching, there was one poor girl, and she wasn't intellectually top-notch. She had some intellectual problems, and people used to bully her. And the science teacher used to come to me and say, I don't know what to do because so-and-so, let's say her name is Jane, that wasn't her name, of course, she's being bullied. So I would take Jane out of the class. I would talk to her and find out what was going on. And at the time that she was with me, he was lecturing his class on proper behavior toward her, letting him know this is inappropriate. They wouldn't like it if it was done to them, and going on, and we won't put up with it. And he handled it as I was dealing with her. Then it would settle down. She'd be free from it for a while. If it raised its head again, we go through the same process. So repeatedly, every so often, I would have her in. So that these children, especially that don't have the highest intellect, really get it. Or the children who have a very high intellect and others are jealous of them also get it. So you have to be aware, and teachers have to be aware, when a child is being bullied, you handle it then, and you don't put up with it. I'm thinking what I would do if I was a superintendent of a school or if I was a parent, how I would handle it. But this is probably not the best time to discuss that. If I have a chance to do it, I will discuss bullying and how to handle it later on. But it's something that we cannot put up with. And I think bullies, if they're doing it through the internet, their internet services should be shut down, at least for a period of time, and then they should go into counseling and find out why is it necessary for them to be a bully anyway. It shouldn't be necessary at all. They're doing it sometimes because they were bullied themselves and they're just passing it on, or passing it forward. It happened to them and they're upset about it, so they're going to do it to somebody else. And somebody else has nothing to do with the fact that they were bullied, but they suffer because of the bullier. So there has to be a way to handle it. Now, kids in the earlier years did not have the storm and stress that our kids do today. And part of it is that the difference in society. You know, if this is fairly close to Christmas when I'm taping this, but if you look back at Jesus and when he was born, Mary, his mother, was about 14, and Joseph, who married Mary, was probably about 14 or 15. But they were able to handle all of the storms and stresses because they didn't hardly exist. Life was simple. women did certain things, men did certain things. At a certain age, they became adult. They could have families. The father would join the father would have his son join him in his business. It could be candle making. He could be a shepherd or whatever, a fisherman, whatever. And the girls would usually become homemakers, but this was what was expected of them, and they just did it, and they didn't argue about it. This is what life was. This is what they experienced, and this is what they knew. So there's no storm and stress. The normal kind of situation where everybody does what they think they're supposed to do, and there's no conflict about it. But now life is so complex, so many choices, so many different things going on at the same time. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying it's bad at all, but we can't bring back what was. But if you understand that life was simpler in years past and they didn't have the kinds of stresses that they have today, I'm talking about teenagers, then you can understand that some of the storm and stress is not from the hormones, although that has something to do with it. It's from the stress of society. Society has changed, and that by itself causes a lot of stress. So it's very important to work with these teenagers and help them all that you can, and work with them so that they know how to handle the stress. But I'm not sure that everybody should always adjust to everything that's going on. You know, why should I adjust to something that's not good? I should be able to extricate myself from something that's not good. I shouldn't have to adjust to it. Just because it's going on doesn't mean it's good, and just because it's going on doesn't mean that it's meaningful. So you have to take charge and work with your child. Now I'm going to close it here. And I'm going to start going into adulthood on the next session that we have. I'll be talking about adulthood and the problems that we have in adulthood from ages, say, about 20 on to about 35. Actually, it's until about age 60, but it's split into 3 sections. Adulthood is young adult, middle adult, and elder adult. And so we'll start all of that next time. So please join me then.